Mystery Brothers. Mystery Brothers.
Mystery Brothers.
Mystery Bros.
Mystery Brothers.
Mystery Brothers.
Mystery Bros.
Episode 14 of Mystery Bros.
Coming at you live.
Oh, yeah. Fucking beautiful day outside. I'm kind of like, you know.
Finally.
Yeah, finally the summer is here.
You know what, Michigan, you really earned your summer.
Yeah, you deserve it, you know.
After going through 4 months of complete cold.
Yeah, just horrible winter. But yeah, so this episode we're going to be talking about, we got a couple topics. The main topic is going to be D.B. Cooper and that story. Pretty interesting. After doing the research, it actually is a pretty interesting story. It's still a mystery, you know, which, you know, is kind of what we do. With Mystery Bros. So we're going to talk about D.B. Cooper, that whole situation. We're going to talk about possible suspects, you know, possible theories about what happened, all that good stuff.
Right.
And then for, you know, towards the end, I think we're going to have time for a little quickie conspiracy, and that's, we're going to talk about Michael Rockefeller, which is not a very well-known story. Not many people know about it, but it's a pretty interesting story about what happened to him. So we'll get into that too. But first, yeah, D.B. Cooper, man. D.B. Cooper is an very interesting story. I guess we'll kind of like start from the beginning, go over the whole situation.
Yeah, we start from the whole story. You have to,
we'll give you the
set
whole
scene.
story. We'll give you the whole story and then just kind of, you know, go from there. Then we'll go into theories, that kind of stuff.
So I believe this did start in the early 70s, right?
Yeah, it was 1971 when this happened. So it was November 24th, 1971. A guy who went by the name of Dan Cooper.
Dan Cooper, right?
Yep, bought a ticket on Northwest Airlines from Portland to Seattle. Which
I guess back then you didn't have to like show a passport or anything, so I think you probably just like could just walk in and buy a ticket.
Yeah, things were way different back then. Like security was way less, obviously, as we'll see.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I guess you didn't really need much to. Yeah, you could just say, "My name's Joe Schmo. I want to buy a ticket here," and they're like, "Here you go, bud. Here's a ticket."
Because like you're not going international, so I feel like the domestic was way more lax back then than it is now.
Yeah, Portland to Seattle. That's so.
It's like a half-hour flight.
That's really short. I didn't even think about that.
$40 is like way cheaper too than like an Uber ride from Portland to Seattle. I might want to look into that option.
Is that what you paid?
Yeah,
$40. But this is also back in the 70s.
Yeah, it's probably like now it's like $100.
Still, that's really cheap.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, it depends. I mean, you can get some really cheap tickets now.
Cheapoair.com.
I got tickets to Colorado for a fucking round trip for $70, but that's kind of because there was like a bit of a pandemic happening.
Right. And how did that trip turn out for you, Evan?
I actually did not end up going because of said pandemic. But yeah. So like we said, Dan Cooper, he bought a one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle. So he gets on the plane. All he has is his briefcase. He's wearing basically like a black suit.
He's very professional looking, like a gentleman style. It's kind of where it's like myth.
Yeah, he had a white button-up shirt, black tie, like a black suit, and then he had like a trench coat, right, like a big overcoat.
Right.
He also had sunglasses on, all right, which is, you know, can't see his eyes. Then it's
He's playing the
did
cool,
that on purpose.
to look cool for school or whatever they say.
Not even to look cool, just so people aren't like, so you can't see their eyes, you know,
right.
And you can't see what they're doing. You can't see what they're looking at. You know, maybe he looked super nervous and he was just like, all right, I'm just going to put some sunglasses on. No one will even know.
No, but like, it's interesting now, like to look back and like see how relaxed security was. Cause there basically was no security.
Yeah. There was no security pretty much back then. Like we said, you could literally just walk up and say, my name's Kevin, I'm buying a ticket here, or I want to buy a ticket to Florida or something. And you didn't even have to show like ID or anything, I guess. Like they were just like, here you go, sir. Take it to Florida. Have fun.
Or maybe you just have to like show like a regular driver's license or something like that could be like easily faked, and like we don't have to like look extremely hard. So it's like probably easy back then.
Yeah, I wonder if he used like a fake ID or if he just said his name was Dan Cooper and that's good enough back then.
That could easily be the case since you could just bring whatever you want on a plane. So
yeah, that's right. There was no security. Like they didn't check anything, like any of your baggage or anything.
No,
like that.
for domestic flights, they said they did no checks back then.
That's crazy. That's super interesting. But yeah, so basically, he gets on the plane. He's sitting in the last row of the plane, right? Very last row on the right side. It was a Boeing 747, right?
Correct. It was one of the biggest planes at the time.
Yeah, Boeing 747, which, pretty big plane, really big for the time. Now, at today's standards, it's probably not that big, but it was still a commercial flight. So he gets on the plane. A few minutes after they take off, he hands a note to the flight attendant that was sitting right next to him or right behind him, basically, because he was in the very last row. Her name was Florence Schaffner. And on the note, it said, "Miss, I have a bomb here, and I would like you to sit by me."
Right.
Done.
At first she said she thought it was like a love note. He was like, that's why she didn't open at first, but he like kept looking back.
Yeah, I heard that too. He he gave it to her, and she like put it in her pocket.
Yeah, she thought it was like a love note.
Bitch, read that shit because it's important. Yeah, he had to tell her. I'm pretty sure he had to tell her like, you need to read that because I have a bomb. I think that's what he said.
I think what I heard, like he said like, you should read that, or kept looking back. Have you read the note yet?
Yeah. So.
She probably like went from, oh, this is a creep to like, oh no,
to like, oh shit. Yeah. I'm sure like it happened back then, but I bet you like hijacking planes was not huge. Like how many times did it happen before that? Probably not a ton.
Probably not, since there's no security. I feel like I don't know, because I don't like dive back in history, but I feel like there couldn't have been like too many incidents, because I feel like they would have, especially on domestic flights, because I feel like they would have tightened up security. Yeah,
I feel like there's been a few, but other than that, it wasn't a very prominent thing. That's why they didn't really have many like securities or anything to stop that. But
it's basically like just getting in on a cab. Honestly, like there's no really difference except you're flying a little farther.
Yeah, pretty much. Like you're just no precautions really at all. So anyway, he gets her the note. He gets her to read it finally, and then she's like, "Oh fuck!" So she goes and sits next to him. He showed her his briefcase that he had with him, which had 8 sticks of dynamite in it, or what looked like it, at least. We never got to actually check on that because he took it with him. But
so apparently, like he showed the crew, like he opened it up and showed like what I have,
and all of them say it looked like dynamite, like it looked like some sort of dynamite like bomb thing that he put together.
It could have all been fake, the crew members.
Which is kind of adds to what we were saying before. Like he just brought a briefcase full of fucking what looked like dynamite and shit onto a plane. So obviously they didn't check anything. And basically he had one of the flight attendants sit next to him and talking on the phone to the people in the cockpit so he could relay information to her, and then she would give it to them and tell them what to say to the police or whoever they were talking to.
And apparently the passengers had no idea this was going on.
Yeah. Most passengers didn't even know, and that's probably what he wanted. He didn't want to cause like a huge panic or anything.
And like that's not what the crew members want either. They don't want like
exactly. It was probably better off for both of them that nobody really knew and they kind of didn't. But yeah, so his demands were, he said, "I want $200,000 by 5 p.m. in cash. Put it in a knapsack." And he said, "I want 2 back parachutes and 2 front parachutes. So 4 parachutes in total." And then it says when we land, he wanted a fuel truck to be ready so they could fuel up the plane. And then at the end it said, "No funny stuff or I'll do the job," which is interesting. It's weird verbiage. "No funny stuff or I'll do the job." meaning blow everybody up, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a suicide thing?
Right.
Oh.
I feel like if they refuse his demands, I feel like you almost have to, because otherwise you're going to jail forever.
Yeah. Yeah, so they probably had to take that seriously.
And it's seriously, like, it's your life. Like, you don't want someone else messing with your life. Like, right? So you take every precaution you need to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And apparently a lot of the people, like the crew and stuff, like, they kind of thought he was cool.
Yeah, like, he was, like, gentleman.
He
like,
was really nice to them.
Yeah.
He was very, like, kind to them, very courteous. Like, he asked if, like, he asked very politely and stuff like this. He never, like, threatened anybody or anything like that. Other than, like, I got some bombs here, just relay what I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he was never, like, he was really cool, apparently. And, like, they were all like, he was kind of a good guy while he was robbing the plane. And I think Tina said that she, like, she thought he was kind of a really nice gentleman, good guy, I guess. But, so then eventually they got everything that he wanted. All of his demands were met. And they landed in Seattle. And that's where they gave him the money. All right. They gave him the money. They gave him the parachutes. And they had a truck ready for refueling for him. So he gave like pretty much like all the passengers that were on the plane, and then all the crew except for like 3 of them, right?
Right.
Like Tina, like 1 flight attendant and like 3 pilots, right?
Right.
And I think a lot of like we said, a lot of the passengers like didn't even know anything happened. Like they got off the plane.
Right. They probably just got off the plane.
They just got off the plane and was like, "Wait, what? We were being hijacked? I didn't know that."
That's probably the best way to find out. Like, how cool of a story would you tell? Like, yeah, I was on that plane.
I was on that plane. I didn't even fucking know it.
Don't even remember the day.
Yeah, right.
Apparently, before he took off, they were having a conversation of where they wanted to go, and he said he'd like to go to Mexico, and the pilot told him, "You can't go to Mexico. We don't have enough fuel for that. You can either go to Reno or Phoenix."
Yeah, they had a few different options, I think. They had like you could stop in Sacramento. You could, there's a few different places, but I guess he chose Reno.
Right. And like I think they might have been unaware of the fact that his plan was to jump off.
Yeah.
Even though he did order parachutes, but
would it have been possible? Do you think it was possible to go to Mexico and they were just saying you couldn't, or what?
Well, this is all the way up in Seattle, right? So I feel like
it is pretty far.
It is. That is a far
but
back
like
in the 70s.
Today you could do that.
Today you could do that, yeah. But back then, I don't know.
Maybe not. Yeah.
He was probably was being honest because he's like.
Yeah, I bet you they were. I bet you they just couldn't actually go all the way to Mexico.
Like, why would you fly to Reno and Phoenix? And why would you just say, "Oh, we can't go farther than Los Angeles"?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So they probably were being honest with him, but and
then I believe from there he was like, he told the other crew member to go back into the cockpit with the pilots, so they couldn't see what they were doing.
Yep, because they took back off again at 7:36. 7:36 p.m. He was asking them. He said that he wanted to fly with the landing gear out. He wanted to fly with the landing gear down, and then he wanted to fly with like the stairway, like the back stairs down as well. But they were like, you can't fly with the stairs down,
right?
Because that wouldn't work. Yeah, it wouldn't work out. You can't, fly the whole way like that. Well, you could fly with the landing gear down apparently, and they did because they were flying very low.
Right. They said
he
fly very low.
specifically said that.
Yeah.
Which I think he's giving a lot of hints that like he's going to jump out. Obviously, he asked for parachutes.
And they had 2 military planes circle. They had 2 military jets circle the plane.
Yeah, they had 2 military jets following the plane. It was smart. It was really smart how he asked for 4 parachutes, because you'd think if he was like, I want a parachute, they could just give him a parachute that doesn't, like a parachute that like it doesn't work or something, and then he just jumps out and he's dead or something like that. But he asked for 4 parachutes, which made the police think that he might take a hostage with them. And they can't give him a parachute that doesn't work if they don't know, he could give that to a hostage and then the hostage is dead. I think
that's as many as crew members that were on the board.
Exactly. So he asked for 4 parachutes. So to make them think that he might bring a hostage, so they had to give him parachutes that worked.
Yeah.
So that was pretty smart. Pretty smart of him. So they did, because they that's what they thought. They were like, fuck, if we give him, we want to just give him a bullshit parachute that doesn't work, so that, or a parachute that will wrap him, or, something
like. But do they know that's still $200,000 they don't get back?
What do you mean?
Money.
If he dies?
Yeah, because you might never find him, and you might never find that money.
They don't give a fuck about the money. It doesn't matter.
I mean, $200,000 is $200,000 back then.
No, it doesn't fucking matter. They don't care about the money. It's not even that much money, $200,000.
It's probably why he did ask for a low amount, so it wouldn't be as
that's a significant amount for a person, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not that much money. Back then, if you've inflation today, that'd probably be asking for $1 million.
Yeah, $500,000 or something.
Which is good, but it's not gonna they're not, no one's gonna be like, oh my god,
he didn't ask for $10 million.
Yeah,
I feel your demands at one point will not be met if you ask for too much.
Well, also he asked for it in cash, and you have to carry you know what I mean. It's gonna be tough to carry
And that's
do you realize $1 million in cash weighs 100 pounds or something? It's a lot.
They also said that's where he kind of screwed up, because he didn't specify in what dollar with the denomination of the money.
Yeah, he didn't say anything. He didn't if he would have asked for it in hundreds, it would have been way less, and it could have been a lot easier to carry. But they gave him to him in 20s. Yes. And they got the money from. And
do you even count that, or do you just
No, I just trust time you. To count it. Yeah, you don't have time to count it. When you're making demands like that, and they you're saying you have a bomb and stuff, they're not going to try and screw you. They're not going to be like, oh, we only give him $100,000. He might kill people or something, or blow up a fucking plane. Why would you? They're not going to fuck with you. So I don't think you really need to count it. You're just
That's one of his big f ups was he didn't specify in the amount, and they gave it to him in 20s.
Yes. So
which is probably it was just probably they
probably 30, 40 pounds. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is a decent that's
it's like a kid.
If you would have got it in hundreds, it probably would have been 10 pounds, maybe 15 or something.
It would have been way easier. That's only that's not that much really in hundreds.
It would have been 2,000 bills. Yeah. Which like I said, maybe 10 pounds, 15 pounds or something. It would be a lot better than in 20s.
Yeah, I can't really tell you because I haven't really seen that many bills in my life.
Yeah, right. So like we were saying, they took off at 7:36. They were on their way to Reno because they were going to stop there, refuel again, and then go down to Mexico City. But
were they going to refuel, or did they just give them as a final option?
No, they were saying that they couldn't make it all the way to Mexico City from there without refueling, so they had to stop somewhere and refuel. So they were going to refuel in Reno, but at about 7:40, only about 5 minutes after they took off, he told the rest of the crew. He told all the crew that he kept with him, which I think was only 3 or 4 people. Everyone, go get up in the cockpit and don't come back out for the rest of the flight. He told them that. So that happened. And then, about 3 hours later, they landed in Reno, and there was no sign of him at all.
Right. On the plane. They noticed that the doors went down because the cabin pressure went up. That's what happens next is the most hotly debated topic because we don't know.
Yeah. Obviously they realized that he must have jumped from the plane. He wasn't there. Money was gone. 2 parachutes were gone. And And that was about it. It basically started like a huge manhunt, you know, from the FBI, and everyone was just looking for him. His description, according to all the crew members on the plane, he was a white male, 35 to 50. All of these descriptors.
That's a huge age.
I was just about to say that. All of these descriptors are just like, they give such a wide range of everything. Like they said he was somewhere between 5'9" and 6 foot. I guess it's only a few. That's like 3 inches, but still 150 to 190 pounds. That's a pretty big range. And then he had black hair and brown eyes.
They probably ask you like, all right, how much do you think is the least amount he weighs? How much do you think is the most? They probably ask you like, what's the youngest you think he is? What's the oldest you think he is? That's probably how they get the range.
But that's such a big range. Like it's hard to like, I would have been like, narrow that down to like a 5-year range, you know?
I don't know if you can tell, maybe 10-year range.
That's such a wide range. I can describe a lot of people, 35 to 50 and 150 to 190 pounds. And basically like they weren't 100% sure where it was that he jumped.
Right.
But like you were saying earlier, like they noted that, what time was it? They said at around 8:15, the crew felt, an oscillation of the aircraft, or like, you know, like a turbulence basically that happened that could have been caused by someone jumping out. So they think that it was sometime around 8:15 when he jumped out. And at that point, they were like, he was like about 100 miles north of like Portland area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like 50 miles, I think. Yeah, he was like 50 miles north of Portland is what they believe. But that's a pretty like huge, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of just a big wild wilderness.
Right.
And then that's where he jumped, but then they don't know when he pulled the parachute. They don't know, like, you know, he could have floated really far. So they had a pretty big range, a pretty big like area that he could have landed in. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
they did like a serious manhunt. They searched like a couple days. Like,
oh yeah, they had airplanes, helicopters, like everybody searching, people on the ground, like all kinds of search methods. They were looking for him, and there was pretty much no trace at all.
He probably planned that out where he was going to jump.
You think so?
Maybe. That's maybe
but
one of the
thing
reasons.
is, here's the thing. They said specifically that when they were negotiating, like where he was going to land, where he was going to go, they were like, "Do you have a flight path en route or in mind?" And he said, he was basically like, "No, I don't care. Like, let's get going. Like, I want to hurry this up." So he didn't know what flight path they were going to take. You know?
True, but you can.
And
I guess you have no cell phone. You can't just call your buddies. So.
And he wanted to go to Mexico City. So, like, that's a totally different flight path than going to Reno. And he was just like, all right. And they took, there's like 4 or 5 different flight paths that you can go from Seattle to Reno.
Right.
And they knew which one they took. So that's why they knew like the area to look. But he wouldn't have been able to know that. You know? I think it definitely was his plan to jump out, obviously, the whole time, but I don't know if he really thought about where he was going to land.
No. I'd figure it out if I had a briefcase of $200,000.
Yeah, right? But yeah, I mean, there was no trace of him ever found. You know, it's very mountainous, like I said, wilderness, very dense forest. And also, like, in the few days after this happened, the weather was really bad. Like, it was rainy and like shitty, like foggy, really not very good visibility. So, you know, they couldn't really see.
Yeah.
You know, so they're just, all things were against them. They did like a huge investigation, you know,
right.
Obviously, because this was like a pretty big crime, hijacking a plane, bringing a bomb onto a plane, that kind of shit. So that, you know, they thought like their criteria, they thought it was possibly some sort of like someone who had military experience. Right. Because, you know, he seemed like he knew a lot about planes. Yeah. That kind of stuff, like flying, like
and parachuting
jumping out.
Experience. Yeah. So they like went back on the records and they looked at all the parachuters and everything. And I feel like they just came up empty on that.
It's hard just to look on because so many people, you know what I mean? It's hard to just based off of that. They even thought that he might be a possibly ex-CIA.
Oh, really?
Only because only because it was this Boeing 747 that the type of plane that he hijacked. First of all, it wasn't a very popular like aircraft back then for commercial. It was only like half or so commercial flights had that airplane, and he made sure that he got a flight that was going to have that airplane. And those airplanes are the only airplanes that had that like back staircase that could come out. And the reason that they think that he might be possibly ex-CIA is because he knew that, and the CIA used those airplanes during the Vietnam War to like drop supplies and stuff into the army, and CIA members would have, that's like knowledge they would have had, you know?
Right.
And you know, they're thinking they don't think he just got lucky and happened to get a plane that had that back staircase on it, because that makes it really easy to jump out. The ones that have like the doors in the front or on the sides, those are really hard to jump out of.
Right.
You know, because you got to jump like against the force, against the wind. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. So yeah, they think he may have possibly been CIA.
Apparently, one of the flight attendants asked him, like, would you have a grudge against our airline? And he said, I don't have a grudge against your airline. I just have a grudge against airlines in general.
He didn't necessarily say that, did he? I thought he said, I don't know, it's not a grudge against your airlines. I thought he just said, but I just have a grudge. You know, they also looked into like the name, because he said his name was Dan Cooper. And
right. I think
they don't
press,
think he used his real name. You know what I mean? Like they thought, so they were thinking like, why do you think he used that name? Do you think there's a reason? And people, they were looking into stuff like apparently, somebody like there was a guy whose initials were DB Cooper, and they thought that he may have been a suspect. So the press printed that right in a newspaper. And that's how the name came. Like that's why it's called the DB Cooper.
Right. It was a press release.
Yeah. DB Cooper.
It sounds better than Dan Cooper.
It's not even the name that he used, but that's what people call it because it just sounds better than Dan Cooper.
DB Cooper.
DB Cooper. And then
that'd be a strange first name. Hey DB, what's going on, man?
Yeah. Well, it's initials, so it's like Dan. AJ or something, but like DB, it's just not super popular. But yeah, and then at one point they thought like possibly he may have been a Canadian, because there's this French comic about a pilot whose name is Dan Cooper, right? and he's like this. It's like I guess it was pretty popular back then in France, but it wasn't sold in America, but it was sold in Canada. So they thought maybe the dude was Canadian. And then they also thought that
doesn't really narrow anything down.
Yeah, exactly. But that gave them a little, maybe they could, it gives them more to look into.
Right. Which gives you like 30 more million people to
look up. But basically they thought it was strange because they think that when he asked for the money, he said in American currency, or like circulated American currency. And they just thought that was kind of strange to specify that if you were an American, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that made them think maybe he was Canadian. But I don't
know. I feel like if I was in the country, if I was hijacking a plane and I was in that country, I would just ask for that country's money. Isn't it like a lot harder to ask for your? And that kind of gives away where you're from. If you ask, I'd like this in U.S. dollars, it gives away where you're from. If you ask for the currency of your native country.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're doing it in another country.
Yeah.
But like other than that kind of stuff, like they really had no fucking idea. No fucking idea. I think that there was like thousands of suspects, you know what I mean? Like
all he left behind is a black clip tie, a pearl tie, and cigarette box that he had.
Yeah.
And an unused
eight cigarettes that he smoked. But back then, I don't think that they like knew that you could get like DNA off of cigarettes and stuff.
So they probably just threw them away.
Yeah, they probably just threw them away.
Now we could probably, if they kept them for 30 years, it would probably be a lot more easier to solve.
Yeah, you could probably get some DNA off of those, and be able to give it a better try. But yeah, they like didn't.
Yeah.
But they did have, like I said, they had like thousands of suspects. But I'd say there's about 5 or 6 suspects that like had some, decent like other people thought it could possibly be them, and there was some like circumstantial type evidence, not really any physical.
Well, they thought one in 1971 when they got a tip that happened again at a plane where the guy asked for $500,000.
Yeah,
and he jumped over Denver, and they thought maybe he could also be DB Cooper. But when they like found out he was a Vietnam vet, and they like raided his home, he had a wife and children, and they found like he had too much evidence against him because they found like the stash of money in the closet, the $500,000, and all the documents.
Yeah, and I mean that was Richard McCoy, right?
Yeah, Richard McCoy.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of things that were similar to the DB Cooper thing, which is kind of why they thought like maybe it was this dude.
They were trying to connect it.
Yeah, they were trying to, and like a lot of the things that he did was stuff that Cooper did.
Right.
But he could have just like read up on that, you know what I mean? Like he could have just known the situation, like known what happened, and then got inspired by it type of thing.
Well, apparently when they showed him to the witnesses of they showed them the flight attendants and pilot, and they said it wasn't him.
Yeah.
And I think you wouldn't lie about that, so.
He used a lot of the same phrases as well. He also said, "Don't try any funny stuff." Like he used a lot of the same phrases that DB Cooper used, so they were kind of like, "Huh," like that made them think connected a little.
But apparently, like a week before, he gave it away to his friend, he said like, "Yeah, if I was DB Cooper, I would have asked for $500,000 and jumped out."
Yeah.
And then a week later, you go do it.
Also, he was only 29 years old.
Right, so he was a little young.
He was a little young. So they said it was somewhere between like 35 and 50, right?
Yeah.
For DB Cooper. So that, that's a little young. And then, yeah, like you said, not very recognized, or none of the crew recognized him.
No, not at all.
He served in the army in Vietnam, and he did like parachuting and stuff like that. So this guy actually like had a lot more knowledge than DB Cooper. And they were like, this was only a year later. Like, did he
probably got inspired.
All that?
He probably was like, "Oh, dude, if DB Cooper could do it, I can do this shit."
Most likely he just kind of got inspired by what DB Cooper did and just kind of stole a lot of the same elements of it because it was a good idea and just wanted to do it himself.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't believe that it was Richard McCoy, but there are a few more. Robert Rackstraw.
I haven't heard about.
No. Okay. Robert Rackstraw was. See, a lot of these people. The only thing is like somebody was just like, "Hey, this kind of looks like him," and then they do a little digging type of thing. Is all it really is. Like they have no physical evidence at all, so. They just have to go off of that. And Robert Rackstraw, he kind of got outed. Like some people said, they think it looks like him and that he's just, could be him. And he has a military background. Mm-hmm. So he would have known about, the planes, that kind of stuff, jumping out. And because he had a military background, he knew how to make bombs. So he would have known how to make that bomb. He had an uncle who was really into skydiving, and his last name was Cooper.
That's so interesting. A little
coincidental there. He was discharged from the Army 5 months earlier, and they wouldn't say why. So that he could possibly, how he said he had a grudge. It could have been that. He could have been pissed off about that.
Aw.
And then when the news the news like asked him about it because I guess like suspects somehow were getting released in the news, and when the news asked him about it, he wouldn't deny it. He never denied, like, he's like, no, I'm not DB Cooper. He never said that. He was kind of being like, cool about it, I guess.
But which kind of makes me think that he kind of wants, like, he kind of wants the fame, not like, because if you actually did that, I feel like you would have you would like say, no, that's
not me. You'd be like, no, yeah. You'd be like, no, not at all. He was, again, though, he was only 28 years old back then, which is pretty young for someone who was described between 35 and 50. And then this guy had blue eyes, whereas DB Cooper, they said he had brown eyes. So probably not him.
I mean, I have another one. They think it's Kenneth Christensen.
Yeah, I know him too. So
he reached out to a private investigator. His brother did, and said, "Yeah, my brother was the DB Cooper." And if you start looking into his background, he was a flight attendant at that airlines. He had notable salary complaints with the airlines. He made $1,500 a month, and then a year later, he buys a beautiful house in Washington, and he paid it in cash. And they're wondering, that's a lot of money for him to save up to spend the money.
I remember that. There's more stuff. Like he did have a military background as well. He worked for Northwest Airlines at one point. For a while, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
He was 45 at the time that happened, which is about in the range.
And they showed a picture to one of the stewardess, and she said that's the closest picture I've seen to DB Cooper, but she didn't confirm him.
He told his brother before he died that he had a secret that he wanted to tell him, but he wasn't going to tell him yet. But then he died, never told him. It's kind of interesting. And then he also, when he died, he had a lot of money in this bank account, over $200,000 in a bank account that most people that knew him didn't know about. So that was a little interesting. But they said that he was he worked in real estate, or he was selling land. So you can make a lot of money doing that. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can, buying land and then.
And the only evidence we have that's him is his brother coming out and saying it's him.
There's really no
right.
There's no physical evidence, so there's literally no way to know unless you figure out who it is and get him to confess. You know what I mean? Otherwise, there's no way. So like usual with Mystery Bros, we'll never know. No, he was never found. No one, nobody ever knows who he is. No one knows what happened to him. But there was something that happened a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, a boy and a father were doing some digging, and they came up and found $5,800.
Yes, and like I was saying earlier when I said that the money came from this Seattle bank, the reason that's relevant is because this bank has this specific bank. It had what was called a ransom kit, where it had this money already set aside so that in case something like this happened, and they had all the bills marked and they knew the serial numbers of all the bills. So they gave him this money and they were like, hey, we know that they basically the FBI was telling the newspapers to tell people to check the serial numbers on the $20 bills that they're getting over the next 6 months and just see, that's kind of asking too much of people. You think people are going to read through, 1,000 different serial numbers and see if their $20 bill matches.
And how many people actually are listening to it? And
yeah. So obviously they never got, any hits on that, but they did. That money that they found
did have the serial numbers of DB Cooper.
It was the same. Yeah, it was part of that money.
Which is shocking too, because it's crazy. Because where it happened, where he supposedly jumped off, it's 50 miles the other direction.
Yeah.
And where the money ended up is very strange too. Some people say it couldn't have come from the river.
Well, if his the spot where they think he jumped out of, if it would have fallen in the river there, it wouldn't have gone past that point because the river goes north.
Right. They have a theory, which I'll get into later, on what happened.
I'll get into it now.
All right. So the theory is, one of the persons who gave him the parachutes asked for the specific model, how it works and everything. And he was surprised that he chose that model, not the sporting model. The sporting model is way easier to jump off, way easier to control. So that's why the parachute guy who gave him the parachute doesn't think he was a master.
They don't think he knew a ton about parachuting per se. Because I remember reading that too. The parachute that he got, he couldn't steer it, right? Like you basically it just goes and then you kind of go where it takes you.
And there was another element that he was finding that night, and that is the cold.
Yes, that's the thing. It was very cold. It was raining. They were flying at they were at 10,000 feet, and the plane was going 315 miles an hour. So
it's very tough.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people think he might be dead.
Right. Well, one theory is a lot of people also said that jump could have been possible. You could have easily landed. But
for someone who's not experienced in skydiving or even parachuting,
you're dealing with the coldest elements ever.
Yep.
So there's two theories of how that money ended up there.
Okay.
And one theory is the money ended up he tied it up and it cut and it while he was going down the wind's all over him. If he didn't secure it properly, it could have just fallen off him, and it landed into the river, and it took the river down. And then they think that maybe, I don't know, it got caught onto something on a boat and it pushed it upwards. And that's how, and a propeller sliced it open. That's how some of the money ended up on that bank.
Okay.
So it went down the river, got caught into something, went upriver, and then some of the money landed on that bank. Which is possible. And if that happened, that must be the worst feeling ever. Because
you just lost some money.
I might as well just how would you feel after that, Evan? You just went through all that and you just see your money.
That would be terrible. You just did all that for nothing, basically. And
then the other. But go ahead.
Really quick, just adding on to the elements and stuff. He was wearing business shoes, dress shoes,
right?
And then like we said, just a suit with a trench coat. So he was not really prepared for landing in the mountains in the middle of winter. You know what I mean? It was November,
right?
So not really the middle of winter, but still getting cold up in the mountains,
right? So that's what they think. And another thing is, since it's hard to steer, one theory
you couldn't steer at all.
He couldn't steer. So it could have been his worst nightmare. He could have landed in the water. And that water would have been freezing. They said he would have had minutes to get out. And if you land in the middle of the lake, he's done.
The river that was there.
Yeah, we could have landed in the river, and there's also a lake farther that way.
It's got a big current too.
Right. But they're saying if he landed in the middle of that lake, there's no way he would have ever.
Wouldn't they have found his body then?
Well, I'm going to get into that theory.
Okay.
So they're saying that if it went in the river and the lake, it somehow all connects to the river. Okay. And the body just got carried, it was flamboyant down the river, and then it got caught by a propeller on the boat and it went upwards, and that's how the money got cut. And then it probably fell off the propeller at some point and sunk down, and the currents took it, and it's probably in the ocean by now. That's what people think.
Mm-hmm. So that river empties out to the ocean?
Yeah.
Okay. What does it go up into Washington and out, or does it go through?
I don't
Oregon?
know. I'm no river expert here. Well, rivers lead the ocean.
Dude? Come on. No, but okay. So
they're basically saying if he landed in the water, he would have been effed.
He's dead, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's kind of only makes sense. Why would you, unless you wanted to purposely bury the money?
Yeah, as to why the money showed up there on that riverbank. But that, first of all, that wasn't all the money. That was only $5,000.
Yeah.
So
maybe he lost some.
Maybe some of it fell out, or maybe I don't know.
Maybe
when I think about it and try and think of what it could have been, I don't know, man. I think maybe some of it fell and someone found it, and then just said fuck it and threw it in the river because it was so fucked up. That's what I would have done, all right? If I was a little kid and I found like $5,000 worth of money, but it was like all fucked up from being outside for years, maybe, or you know what I mean? I'd throw that shit in the river and be like, fuck it.
That could easily happen.
Could have been that, you know.
They thought maybe he buried it so he could come back later.
Although the spot where it was found, that wasn't like that part of the river, or that part wasn't land when he did this. Wasn't it like a few years later when they made like a bank there or something?
Right.
So there's no way he could have done it right then.
Yeah.
He would have had to bury like a few years later.
It's really strange how that money got there. Maybe
I think it's for sure that it like fell somehow and got in the river and floated up there.
Or maybe the whole sack fell. Maybe he's alive and the whole sack fell into the river, which is like a big.
Dude, would you just kill yourself at that point, dude?
I don't know. I would feel really bad. Like I just went through the most stressful situation ever in my life. You just did
all that. Now you're like one of the most wanted people in the world. You hijacked a plane, like all this shit, and you didn't even get any money out of it. God, that'd be the worst.
And you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, like you're literally.
There's no cell phones back then.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember they reading somewhere like some people at this bar, like in around that area, say that there was a person that possibly fitted that description that came in like the next night or something, and they didn't know where he was from, and he didn't talk really to anybody, this and that. But you know, there was no way for the cops they couldn't find that dude later to talk to him or anything. And this is back in the 70s, so there wasn't like cameras and stuff at bars, or, you know, there was nothing there. So basically there was nothing they can do. But there were some stories from some people on this kind of like mountain town around Oregon where close to where they think he landed. So that's interesting.
That's cool. That's interesting. So we'll see if he's alive. A lot of people do think he's dead. He could be alive.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people think he was dead just because, like I said, I mean, when he jumped, they were flying through a storm, 10,000 feet, going 315 miles an hour. It was pretty cold. Like that's a lot of things against him. You know what I mean? Even someone who's an experienced like parachuter would have some trouble with that, you know? And it was the middle of the night. Couldn't see shit.
And he wasn't dressed for this weather, so like.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, but it's just like the forest is so dense up there that like you just wouldn't find his body, I guess. You know, or animals would get to it or something. Like
it's a big forest. Like I'm sure you can't like search every single part of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. The Northwest, Pacific Northwest, like that whole like area up there, there's some really dense, thick forests up there that we just can't search. It's just too much. You know what I mean? Where Bigfoot is. Maybe Bigfoot got him, dude. How do we not think about that, dude? Obviously, he landed.
No parachute in sight?
Yeah. Obviously, he landed, and then Bigfoot just killed him.
Dude, Bigfoot took that
money.
Bigfoot
has the money.
And Bigfoot's like, what am I doing with this money? And like dug it and like put it
buried
away.
it.
Yeah. Solved it.
Case solved, dude. Case solved. That's it. But yeah, I mean, the woods up there are so dense that like it's very possible that he could have died and we just would never find the body.
Like his parachute could all still be like somewhere.
Chances are his body got eaten by something.
Or the suitcase is still there. Evan should go search for
what
it.
If the money's still there, dude? What if we find it?
I mean, they couldn't accuse us for being DB Cooper, so we're good.
It's not worth it for only $200,000. You know what I mean?
I don't know, Evan. If I found
that would be nice, but like you realize it would cost a lot of money to go out there and like go searching for that.
Right.
It'd be cool. I mean, I like camping and shit like that, but it would suck.
Where would you even start?
It's dangerous, man. Just like he could have died, we could easily die. Anyone can easily die.
We should start our own like History Channel show, like finding DB Cooper's money.
I'm sure that's happened. I'm sure that's out there.
And they don't find anything. They just like, oh, a lead here.
Yeah,
right. I got something. Oh, it's just that.
They did find a little piece of something that ripped off of the plane. They think that ripped off of that plane. When you put the stairs down, a little tag or something was on there got ripped off, and they found that. But that just proves how fucking fast that they were going, you know what I mean, and how like treacherous it is doing that. So yeah, but we'll never know, you know. I think if you had to ask me, I like to think he survived. You know what I mean? I like to think like he fucking survived and he spent that money and had a good life. You know what I mean?
And just lost if you just lost 5,800, just like no big deal.
No big deal, dude. You still got 195,000.
Even if it's like 20, it's not a huge deal.
Yeah, dude. But in the end, I feel like he probably died. Although I don't know, man. I don't know why I think that.
I feel like their evidence too that he died is that there's no circulation of money, but that's also hard. Like, how are you going to check like every single thing?
Yeah, it could have easily been spent, and
yeah.
But do you think if he would have taken that money to a bank, he would have been found out? Do you think that banks check the serial numbers on all the money they take in deposits?
Not a Swiss bank.
Well, I mean an American bank.
I think American bank. Yeah, you can't take that shit to an American bank.
You think so? You think he had to just keep it as cash?
Maybe even worldwide. There might be a worldwide banking network that says, hey, if these serial numbers are found anywhere, please contact.
On American $20 bills. Maybe that's something they do. I don't know. I've never worked at a bank. I don't know if they like keep track of all the serial numbers of the deposits and stuff. But
it's actually kind of smart. They probably do. It's a smart thing to see.
They probably do now, but I don't know if they did back then or not. Who knows?
Honestly, I would just like keep it in a closet somewhere.
Yeah, just keep
under a pillow.
Yeah, keep that shit under your mattress, and you just have money for you can just go in there and grab it when you need it. But yeah, I'd like to think that he survived.
Yeah, it'd be really cool if he was described as such a gentleman. Yeah, it was like a homeless crime.
He didn't kill anybody.
Nobody knew on the plane.
Yeah, nobody got hurt. He just outsmarted, he just did something cool and just fucking had the balls to do it. Nowadays, you can never do that, obviously. Nowadays, you can't even bring, you can barely bring
shampoo on the plane.
Yeah, you can't bring shampoo. You can't even bring, a pocket knife or anything.
I think scissors, no scissors either.
Yeah, no, so yeah, there's no way that you could ever do anything like that today.
Maybe even a sharp pencil.
I think you could bring a pencil, but
you just get a sharp edge. All right, let me in.
I don't think people are going to be too scared of a pencil. Someone on the plane is going to be able to take you down. But I think they have air marshals that fly on. I'm pretty sure every single flight there has to be at least one.
I think internet. I don't think domestic. Not domestic. Definitely no, not domestic.
I think so, dude.
I've been on so many domestic flights. I've never noticed an air marshal.
You're not supposed to notice them. They're supposed to be just a person that is wearing plain clothes and everything. They don't want you to notice them.
I don't think
because then you're just gonna kill them first. If you're if you're trying to take over a plane, where the air marshal is, kill him, and then you're good.
I don't think. I think it's on international. I think domestic.
No, all flights. All flights. My buddy's dad is a pilot.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah. At least on all Spirit flights. He flies for Spirit. I don't know about other airlines, but I'm pretty sure that's a rule. Now, it wasn't before that. It wasn't before 9/11, but now ever since 9/11, there has to be at least one air marshal on every flight. At one point, I think it's 2 for international or something like that. But
I feel like it's a pretty chill job.
Yeah, that'd be cool. You just fly around everywhere But yeah, it's interesting, with DB Cooper. It's a cool story. Again, as all Mystery Bros goes, we'll never know what really happened to him, but it's
interesting.
It's fun to think about. It's a fun little mystery there.
Little tidbit.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other little thing we were going to do, this one's kind of just going to be a little quickie because it's just we don't know much about it, and it's just an interesting little thing, but Michael Rockefeller, you know who that is?
Yeah. He was a very successful businessman. Had oil
his family, though. His family, yes.
Owned a lot of oil companies.
Yes, the Rockefellers are one of the families that rule the world right now. they're one of the families. They're one of the families that it's basically like the Illuminati. They have so much money that they kind of run the world behind the scenes. We don't even, that's a whole nother episode. But Michael Rockefeller, he's obviously a part of the Rockefeller. He was the great grandson of John D. Rockefeller, who was the first United States billionaire. And like you said, it was oil. He basically he owned some oil companies that were kind of running the whole oil business. So yeah, John D. Rockefeller was one of the richest men in the world, first U.S. billionaire. And this was his great grandson, Michael Rockefeller. He was the son of Nelson Rockefeller, who was the governor of New York for a while. His like we were saying, his family is very deep in business and politics, But Michael wasn't really interested in that shit. He was born in 1938. All right. And like I said, much more interested in art than he was in business and politics.
So he kind of just didn't really want to get involved.
Everyone else in the Rockefeller family is all about making money and all that kind of shit. He just was kind of interested in art. He graduated from Harvard in 1960 because, he's a Rockefeller. So he's going to go to Harvard or one of those Ivy League schools, because that's just how it goes. And then after that, he joined the board of directors of the Museum of Primitive Art, which is actually his father founded it a few years earlier. So yeah, he became board of directors for that. Life is just a lot easier when you're rich as fuck around. That life is just a lot easier for you and a lot better for you when your family has a ton of fucking money. Anyways, in this there was a lot of Aztec, Mayan, Nigerian, and other tribal artifacts in this museum.
Oh, really?
And Michael, he wanted to kind of make his, he wanted to make his own name for himself, and he wanted to kind of come up with some artifacts, something to put in this museum, and he kind of wanted to contribute. You know what I mean? So he decided that he wanted to study the indigenous people of Dutch New Guinea, which at the time it was owned by the Netherlands. It was a territory of the Netherlands. Today it's part of Indonesia, but at the time it was part of the Netherlands, and it was Dutch. Mm-hmm. And they basically have some really at the time, this was back in the 60s or 70s, I think. No, 60s. This is early 60s. There was still a lot of tribes that they weren't completely uncontacted, but they were very, very rarely contacted type of stuff. And he wanted to kind of get involved in that and learn about their culture, kind of gather artifacts, that kind of stuff. So he basically set up a team to go study what was called the Asmat tribe. In 1960, his team, which was basically scientists, explorers, and some documentarians. So they had some cameras and stuff. Not video cameras, but pictures and stuff. It's back in the 60s. They set out for the island, and they went to this village. It's called Ostjanep. I don't know. Maybe it's a Dutch word or something, but it's Otsjanep. Ostjanep or something.
Ostjanep.
Yeah, something like that. And that's where a lot of the Asmat tribe lived. Basically, Michael was really into it. He tried to learn as much as he could about them. He was studying them. He also kind of participated in a lot of the rituals and stuff that they did, which a lot of people say the Asmats have some very interesting and strange rituals. All kind of tribal things. They have tribal groups. They have strange rituals, but these guys did some weird shit. Apparently they would, whenever they had battles or something, afterwards they would eat their enemies.
Oh, just sacrifice.
So it was cannibalism, basically.
Did he join in? Do you have any descriptions?
I don't think he joined in on that.
How did people taste?
Right. What if he did? No, I don't think it was documented that he joined in that ever.
So the Rockefellers aren't secretly eating cannibalism right now?
No. We're going to get to that. he was like extremely fascinated with this tribe and their peoples. He was able to gather some like masks that they would use, masks, spears, statues, that kind of stuff. So he got a bunch of good artifacts from them that he was going to bring back to his museum. And when he left, he said he vowed to return. He was like, I'm going to return. I'm going to study even more. I'm going to learn more shit. And yeah, he was super interested in it. Like he really cared, you know what I mean? Like he really cared about like indigenous tribes and learning about that kind of stuff. So he loved it. And, less than a year later, in 1961, he got another group together, a much smaller group, because this was more of just, he was just going to like take some pictures and stuff. They returned. He went back there. On the way to the village, their boat overturned, and it like basically got overturned, and they were about 12 miles from the coast, from shore. Now, and like I said, they're about 12 miles out, but I mean, when you're in the ocean, basically you could still see the land, you know? So Michael was basically like, I'm going to swim to the land, to the coast, and see if I can like get some help or something from there. And that was the last time he was ever seen.
My first instinct tells me that he drowned.
You think so? It's possible. It's definitely possible to swim that though.
Right.
You know? Especially when you're going towards the land, I feel like doesn't the current kind of take you, don't like wave, like through the waves and stuff, don't you just kind of float that way anyway? Or is it different based on where you're at?
Just based on where you're at. I mean, he could have made it.
Possible.
Maybe just landed. Was the place populated where he was by the land?
Not really. No. Because decades later, there was some other smaller tribes in the Asmat part of that like Oshchenep area, and they claimed that they found him and they killed him and ate him. Now, if we go back here in 1957. Dutch colonists, they stormed the village of Oshchenep to try and settle a conflict that was going on between some of the tribes. And the Dutch ended up killing 4 Asmat leaders. Not a good,
not the best way.
Not the best way to help settle things.
No, definitely not.
And supposedly, Michael Rockefeller got to land when he made it to shore. He was greeted by these leaders' sons. Mm-hmm. And, they don't know where he's from. They think white person, bad, white person. He's the one who killed my fathers. So apparently they killed him, ate his flesh, and then made like tools and spears and stuff out of his bones. That's just what they do. Now, when they were asked, they were doing like Michael's father, his parents flew to New Guinea to like search for him when they. I'm
sure there was an extensive search party.
I'm sure because they're rich as fuck. So yeah, I'm sure they had airplanes, ships, and helicopters like searching the whole area. No remains, no trace, no remains were ever found. But they were like after this claim was made, they were asked like, do you have like any like. They said that they made like spears and stuff out of his bones. Like, do you have anything like so that we could like at least prove it? And they couldn't give him anything.
So that's kind of.
But this was decades later.
Yeah.
10. I think it was like 15 years later. So I mean, that's a pretty long fucking time to have the same spear, the same. So that's believable. But at the same time, it's like nothing. They couldn't have any like a necklace.
I feel like that's like trying to give yourself a little fame.
Yeah, maybe that's why some people don't necessarily believe it. Some people think, there's a lot of theories. Like
maybe
like
just
you
like
said, some people think he just drowned and nothing. He just drowned and died or got eaten by sharks or something like in the ocean.
Or maybe he like just wanted to live with the natives, like just blend in.
That is a theory, dude. That's a theory. Some people think that he just like stayed there and lived there.
Like, fuck the real world. Like, let me just live this nice, peaceful life.
Right.
No money, no worries.
He could have been one of.
But he has money.
He was the heir to the fortune. He was the oldest son of Nelson, so he would have like eventually after his dad died, he would have been the heir to the fortune. He would have had the money. So it's like so that's kind of noble of him to say like, I don't care about that. I want to go like learn about these tribes and stuff. You know what I mean? That's why I respect him. Normally people that are born into those families, I hate them because they're fucking running the world and they don't give a fuck about us. But yeah, so it's kind of a mystery. Like no one really knows what happened. Some people believe the tribes and say they probably just like killed him and ate him. And then, you know, that kind of thing. Some people think he may have drowned in the water after the boat capsized. But everybody else survived that was on the boat.
Maybe he wasn't the best swimmer.
Maybe, yeah.
But they obviously didn't all swim together.
No, Michael said he's going to try and go for the shore, and the other guys, I don't know what happened to them, but they're all alive. I know that.
They're like, well, cool, just chill here and just wait for help.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's what happened. I wonder, that would be interesting to look into what happened to them. All I know is that they're alive because they told the story about what happened. And yeah, and some people think like you said, maybe he landed and then just like said, fuck it, and I'm going to become part of the tribe, you know? Who knows? He was so into it. He was very fascinated.
I feel like there would have been a story though, like, yo, this white guy joined.
Yeah, you would be like, hey, who's this one like white dude with blonde hair, like hanging out with all these Aborigines?
Could you imagine like the Rockefellers like doing some searches and they like come across like this white warrior, like face paint all over him, like with like his beard?
Yeah, you know, look, he might stand out a little bit, so... Yeah, but it's just a little mystery, you know, mini mystery of like what happened. And it's interesting because like, you know, he was a Rockefeller. You know, usually these guys are just rich as fuck their whole lives and run shit and then die when they're, you know, 90 years old. But you may have been eaten by cannibals. Yeah, I think that next week we're going to try and redo our Dyatlov Pass and MH370 episode because that one had some audio issues. But we also need to come with some new content, so we're going to do something else too. All right, so
stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll let you know. You'll find out what that'll be because again, we haven't really thought about what it's going to be yet. So, but we will tell you that at some point within the next week you'll get a new version of the Dyatlov's Pass and MH370 because that was a good episode. Yeah. I think Dyatlov's Pass is really interesting. MH370, you know, it's interesting, but I think Dyatlov's Pass is really crazy. So we'll redo that episode for you guys and get that out there. And then we'll also come up with something new, but you have to stay tuned and see what that is. We'll keep that a mystery because we don't know yet. But yeah, thank you guys, you know, for listening to the Mystery Bros. Episode 14 now. There we go. We're getting up there. Yeah, thank you guys for listening, man. Peace out.
Mystery Bros. Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.
Mystery Bros.